Ripley's Believe It or Not presents He Traded a Shadow for a Kingdom. Darkest Africa at the turn of the century was a dangerous place for the white man. Not the least of its terrors were the beasts of the jungle. In this savage land, man could be equally ferocious. So discovered an intrepid Belgian soldier sent by his commander on a mission up the Congo River. Captain Albert Paulus of the Belgian army knew that the penalty for trespassing on tribal territory was death. His blood ran cold when he was brought before his captor. The Sultan Yembio of Anzenda ruled a tribe of cannibals. Faced with a horrible death, the captain's mind raced to figure a way out. Suddenly, he remembered his almanac. It was February 18th, 1905, a very important date. There was a chance if it worked. Quickly, he told the cannibal chief that if he was harmed, he would strike down the moon. It would never shine again, and I will lose my hair. The suspicious Sultan hesitated, then decided that Paulus had no such magic power. A black shadow began to bite into the silver disc. At this moment, a cry went up from the listening natives. The Sultan looked and gasped. Yembio hesitated. His superstitious soul trembled. The shadow crept deeper into the moon. The natives were terrified. They pleaded with their monarch. "Save the moon," they cried. Yembio said, "I will do anything you ask." "I will save the moon," Paulus told the terrified Sultan, "only when you recognize the authority of the King of Belgium over your country and yourself. Quickly, or the moon will be gone forever." The Sultan agreed and swore his allegiance before all his tribe. Paulus made a few magic gestures. Slowly, the shadow receded. There was an explosion of joy from the savages. Thus, an area of 80,000 square miles and a population of 700,000 became a part of the Belgian Congo, because Captain Paulus, whose hobby was astronomy, had remembered the exact hour and date of an eclipse of the moon. Believe it or not. Ripley's Believe It or Not presents The Bowl of Death. The game, called bowling on the green, was illegal in England back in the 16th century. But in certain well-hidden greens, it was played for high stakes. In Whitehall Palace lived a king that was famous for other things than bowling on the green: his uninhibited table manners, his many marriages, and methods of disposing of queens that had grown dull. Although history does not emphasize his prowess as a bowler, he had never lost a match. He was the king and a champion. One day in 1539, this royal bowler challenged Sir Nicholas Carew to a game of bowls and won the first round. With a win for each, the match stands even. Now, high stakes rest on the outcome of the third and final round. It's the king's last bowl. His championship is at stake. It looked like an easy win for Sir Nicholas, but he was bowling to lose, and yet it must not appear that way. His very life depended on this last roll. Sir Nicholas Carew was promptly tried for the crime of treason. For beating King Henry VIII, he was convicted and executed, leaving the king still the champion. Believe it or not. Ripley's Believe It or Not presents $25 that bought a fortune. 2 centuries ago, when the sailing ship was the lifeline of England and Lloyd's of London was a coffee house, a young insurance clerk by the name of John Sowerby was weighing a purchase that would cost him his entire savings. The amount, $25. Wages being what they were, the decision was most difficult. When the bell tolled at Lloyd's, anyone within its sound quaked with terror, for it was the death knell of a ship lost at sea. For every ship that was lost, the hapless underwriter paid off. But the insurance received never equaled the value of the ship and cargo, for it was a risky business at best. John Sowerby was aware of this, since he had prepared many of the settlement drafts. In cases where a ship was considered lost, the underwriter paid a discounted indemnity, but the ship belonged to the owner if it could be found or salvaged. Generally, the owner sold her for whatever he could get. John was fully aware of this also, but he studied the probabilities. She could have been wrecked in a storm off the Cape of Good Hope. By the record, many had been lost there. Or taken as a prize. Or perhaps she might have run aground and laid up for repairs. Or merely dismasted and limping home on a jury rig. Or a mutiny. There could have been many reasons for the Albatross to make a belated appearance. Perhaps it was worth the gamble. But he had lost precious time. Maybe she was already sold. He soon discovered not only was the ship lost, but the owner too. Besides, his absence from work could cost him his job. Perseverance, however, paid off, and John was the proud owner of a lost ship. The price, $25, his entire savings. As he checked off the days, doubts haunted him. It appeared he had bought nothing more than a useless document. Then came startling news. The Albatross, long overdue, was docking at Southampton. Could it be his ship? When John Sowerby reached his ship, he learned he had acquired not only a fine vessel, but a fabulous cargo. A clerk no longer, John sold the cargo, and with part of his money bought a castle, Dalston Hall. There he enjoyed the life of a country gentleman, for the $25 gamble had bought him a fortune amounting to $3.5 million. Believe it or not. Ripley's Believe It or Not presents a bowl of soup that won a king. Little things sometimes make a big mark on history. Arteman Mateoff is a man of letters, a minor official in Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His adopted daughter, Natalya, does the cooking. The sense of smell can often be arresting. As foul odors can be repulsive, perfume can be alluring. The stranger is none other than His Majesty Alexis I, Emperor of Russia. His Majesty asks if the young lady that is eavesdropping would be kind enough to serve him. Offering his apologies for intruding in their home, he explained that while walking, he inhaled the most intriguing fragrance of borscht that he had ever smelt. He couldn't resist entering. For weeks, Artemon Mateev was raised in position and rank, chief of section, minister of foreign affairs. And then one day, a letter arrived that made Artemon's humble home a kingdom. And so Natalya, the adopted daughter of Artemon Mateev, became the empress of all Russia. She bore a son who became the greatest Tsar Russia ever had, who founded the city now known as Leningrad, Russia's first seaport, changed the Russian calendar, the alphabet, and dress. His name was Peter the Great. Believe it or not. Ripley's Believe It or Not presents The King's Goof. Do you count your change? You bet your life you do. And if there's not enough, somebody's going to hear about it. But suppose there's too much. Do you give it back? You do? Every time, regardless of the circumstances? Abe Lincoln did. Walked miles to give back pennies. All right, you have the benefit of the doubt. Let's say you return the money. But suppose they won't take it. Unlikely, perhaps, but it has happened. In the year 1675, it happened to John Callender, a Scottish blacksmith who did some work for King Charles II of England. When he finished, Callender submitted a bill for his services. As a good Scottish businessman, he itemized the bill and totaled it in Scottish pounds. King Charles, however, ordered it paid in English pounds sterling, unaware that he was giving the blacksmith 12 times as much money as he had earned. Callender saw the mistake immediately. Here was a fortune, legally his. But he also saw that he might be putting himself in grave danger by keeping it. He decided to return the money before the king learned of his mistake from someone else. Callender soon discovered that his chances of getting rid of the money were excellent, but the chances of that money reaching the king were very slim, because nobody would give him a receipt. The books were balanced, the money had been paid, and no blacksmith was going to make a fool of the king's treasurer. John Callender was becoming the most unpopular man in the palace, so he took his money and went home. Certain that someday the king would discover the mistake and demand the money, Callender hid it in a safe place. And then one day, the king did discover the error. Riders were sent to find Callender. Their duty was not to bring him in. Instead, it was to reward his honesty by officially granting him the entire sum. Overjoyed, the blacksmith rushed to retrieve his treasure. But the money was gone. He lived through hours of torment before his wife finally found out what he was looking for and brought it to him. But Callender had had enough. Convinced that so much money could not be safeguarded even within his own family, he proceeded to spend it all immediately. he bought a famous mansion called Craigfort, which became the home of the Callender family for the next 3 centuries. A mansion that was paid for by a king's mistake. Believe it or not. Ripley's Believe It or Not presents The King's Double. On July 28, 1900, Umberto I, King of Italy, was dining at a little restaurant in the company of his aide, General Ponziavalle. He had come to the town of Monza to award on the following day prizes at a local athletic contest. The king's attention was centered on a dignified old man who was in charge of the establishment. Before the monarch stood a man who might be his very twin. The striking resemblance between the king and subject proved to go far beyond physical similarity. King Umberto learned that the man's name was Umberto. The date of his birth, March 14, 1844, was that of the king's, and the moment was exactly the same, 10:30 in the morning. Both were born in Torino. Both were married on April 2nd, 1866. The name of Umberto's wife was Margherita. The Christian name of the king's wife was Margherita. Amazingly, both had a son, both named Vittorio. Citizen Umberto opened his inn on January 9th, 1878, which was the exact day, month, and year King Umberto came to the throne of Italy. There were many other points of similarity, facts which delighted the king. To honor his namesake and double, the king invited him to see the athletic games from the royal booth. He informed the general that he would make the innkeeper a cavalier of the crown of Italy. At the stadium, the king looked in vain for the innkeeper. And then the news came. Umberto was dead, the result of a fatal gun accident. The king was shocked and grieved. He would, however, honor the man by attending the funeral in person. 3 shots rang out. 2 of the assassin's bullets pierced the king's heart and killed him instantly. The strange finale of the most incredible cycle of parallelism known to history. Believe it or not. Ripley's Believe It or Not presents The American Teacher Who Became a King. Nantucket, Massachusetts, 1827. A British admiral, Sir Isaac Coffin, donated $12,500 to endow a school on this Massachusetts island, exclusively for the benefit of children who bore his name. And sure enough, when the school opened, 230 children were registered. Every one of them named Coffin. American education has produced many astounding stories. One rather dubious distinction goes to the grade school of Carter County, Oklahoma. In 1918, its entire graduating class, consisting of more than 100 students, all failed the final examination. Pretty discouraging for them and for their teachers. But some teachers have achieved great results and made their mark in American history. One of them even became a king. France, 1790. A popular young duke abandoned his aristocratic title and joined the revolution. At the age of 18, he became a lieutenant general and led a French army to battle in Holland. But despite his popularity and his education, the young duke was defeated, and worse, was implicated in a plot to overthrow the French Republic. Forced to run for his life, he took refuge in Switzerland, then Germany, then Scandinavia. But the revolutionary government of France was afraid of this young nobleman. Anywhere in Europe, he represented a threat to their authority. So they imprisoned his family until he agreed to sail to America. Keeping his word, the young Duke settled in Philadelphia in 1796. He proceeded to earn his living by teaching school. 23 years old, personable and fluent, he was on all accounts an excellent teacher. For 10 long years he taught. With each passing year, the call of his homeland grew stronger. And so in 1800, lonesome and heartsick, he returned to Europe to live as near his beloved country as possible. For as long as Napoleon ruled, it was not safe for the young Duke to enter France. And then came Waterloo. Napoleon abdicated, and on August 7th, 1830, the Duke was recalled. By the grace of God and the will of the people, the one-time Philadelphia school teacher was crowned Louis Philippe I, King of France. Believe it or not.